Click the links for Odysee, BitChute, support my Vital Poor Work and Coffee, or join the channel and get yourself a shiny little thing. So I just wanted to show this one icon before I got this picture. It's this guy is killing it on Twitter. So, dear SGWs in comics, you may want to delete your tweet history right now. Say that you always kept an open mind on Comicsgate and that you were always against cancel culture. You're probably wondering how an adult who's in his 50s or something could be this much of a giant bleeding skirt. If you image search him, you will understand very quickly. Critical Blast and Douglas Ernst both have blogs where I think Douglas Ernst has a blog that he has mentioned. He has issues with Dan Slott, and Doug just takes him down piece by piece. Dan Slott's a really bad person. If you look at his image, you go like, yep, this is what the guy looks like who would say this kind of stuff. And someone below in one of the comments says something like, imagine if you will, a world where adult men speak to each other like this. Imagine telling these people in 1943 Hamburg that adults would be speaking in such a way, and they would look at you like, do they have balls? Were they born without testicles? My point is that the environment for comic sales is changing quite rapidly, and you may wish to undo some things before people, really take notice of who's on what side. You may just want to go through your tweet history. That's all I'm saying. So what do you do? I always had an open mind. No. I was always supported due process. I was very much against witch hunts. I just waited and looked for evidence and rationale, and I want to cross-examine. I didn't just listen and believe. No. Oh, Comicsgate. I kept an open mind on Comicsgate. Tweet history. Tweet deleted. So what do you do when you seize an empire, but then you realize that the people who built the empire built something good or great because they were the kind of people who could build something great? It's like that interview with Empire of Dust. All you had to do was maintain the equipment and infrastructure. Nobody is asking you to build or innovate anything new. Just keep it running. The image of Gail, Simone, and Kelly Sue DeConnick, who are making fish faces at the camera and saying, "Sorry, boys, we took over while you were sleeping." Oh, you tricksy minxes, you. How it started and how it's going. Yeah, sort of. You then proceeded to not sell, which is kind of awkward because you're in the business of selling comic books. Now you have Comicsgate, Zoop, Substack, and people leaving the mainstream for whatever form of indie stuff that they can piece together because the industry got taken over by globalist vermin. Good job, guys. You canceled all the, I'll say, Japanese from the 1940s. It's not fair to keep picking on the beautiful Germans. Now it's just the anti-white Marxists who are left writing comics with nobody to balance them out. Congratulations. The parasites have full control of the host now. You can make that little snail do anything you want. Build that is a bold strategy, Cotton. How is that going to work out for you? We took something over, and then we broke it, and then we blamed the customers. Profit? So this is the guy who actually claims to have been the guy with that issue with Tom King, Cody Tucker. He says, listen, to be fair, I just made the mouse get ripped on my way in. Plus, I just got really shy around you and Mitch. Great. See, I think he might have, I don't know if he deleted the tweet. And I mean, later, Mr. King, Mr. CIA badass. Gee, it's not like the movies, you idiot. He had to find a safe space, so he had to put those replies so only people could reply who he followed or he had mentioned in the thing. It's like that's kind of what a pussy does, dude. You're 40. You're not a 6-year-old girl. You be less of a pussy, Mr. Badass. If things were great, Mags and Joe Glass would not be out begging. And credit to Mags, they begged for $5,000, and they got $5,000, which they immediately spent on weed. Oh, is that defamatory? ask Mags. I'm sure they will admit they spent some of that money. Yes, I just happened to, for my own mental health, I needed to get some sweet bud. What happened to Vagrant Queen and The Pride? Maybe you guys should do a crossover, or maybe touch grass. Hey, at least Joe Glass is saying buy my product. He's not just begging for money, so that's something in his corner. You could always sell what the customer wants. I'm not saying sell to the Chads in Hugo Boss. I mean, sell to the soy people, the Bolsheviks, the cope, seethe, dilate crowd, who proudly burn small businesses down. Hashtag diversity is our strength, except not really. Why don't they buy your stuff? Because it's patronizing, anti-white, derivative, breastless, fuzz-bumping cliches. You would think SJWs would want to read confirmation bias stories about how plucky, brave POCs have to battle the evil blonde men once again every month. It's the same blonde-haired... Oh, I'm sorry. Sometimes they really shake it up and give you a red-haired, green-eyed fellow who is a Japanese from the 1940s. But for whatever reason, the soy people are not interested. Probably more for the reason that female characters, on average, are less compelling to everyone across the board, except maybe if you're legitimately a lesbian. But it's like you're talking 1% of the audience, and then what percentage of those are going to buy comics? Not sustainable. Because women should be raising kids and taking care of the family. A female Batman is just silly. Or a female Hulk. It looks like Hulk. It doesn't make sense to put a woman in a male role. Just use a male. Following comics for the past few years has been a window into a madhouse, but not the cute, sexy Harlequin, but actual evil, deranged people who spend all day on Twitter, that's not an exaggeration, doing their performative virtue signaling about the latest purse puppy thing hired to not sell something, to take control of something and then turn it into Haiti and to be proud of that. That's a weird flex. Look, Zimbabwe. Congratulations. Now we're literally starving. We canceled everyone. We finally got rid of the Austrian painters. He just loved animals. But unfortunately, they're literally the only people with any talent whatsoever at all. So Comicsgate, Substack, Zoop, Vox Day's got Arkham Comics. Turns out Vox Day is actually a really good writer. Who knew? I thought he was just some shitlord on the internet. But no, he can actually put a really good story together. He's got his own, I don't know what it is, some kind of publishing company. Actually, I don't know too much about it. But it's, I read, the stuff I read was like, whoa, why is this not more well known? I keep saying that about a lot of things that are not well known. Like, what's Meyer's book, Ironsides? I look at Ironsides, like, whoa, this has a lot of potential. This should be, like, people should be talking about it. And then you look through the YouTube spheres, the video spheres, you're like, oh, nobody's talking about Ironsides. That's weird, because this has a lot of potential to go, like, mainstream into movies and stuff like this. And it's like, oh, because you guys are the wrong thinkers, so we're not going to talk about Ironsides. We're not going to shill anything that actually has potential, actually has legs. Anyway, so people are finding these indie stuff, Comicsgate and stuff, and it's not like those are guaranteed sales. That's shaky ground, cutting out for Comicsgate, and it's not fun taking a lifeboat and rowing for a safe harbor in a storm. But the SS Mainstream Comics is sinking anyway. You can make your own stuff and own it, or you can draw breastless trans fuzz bumpers for idiots. SJWs have screwed things so badly that they created Comicsgate. They made it possible to sell overpriced graphic novels on YouTube. Don't get me wrong, they're very good, but it's like for most of them, you're looking at the price and like this doesn't seem like you can carry an industry on this. But yeah, you can, because the competition doesn't exist. It's so bad. Yeah, you can sell this stuff on YouTube, but first you have to build an audience. You have to make videos. It's not rocket science, but it's also not nothing. It does take time. It doesn't take much effort, but I will say it takes time. And for the people who do it well, it probably does take effort. You got to go on live streams. You got to get most importantly, a mailing list going. You got to work on your comic while you're doing all this other stuff. And when your mailing list crosses over into go from red ink into black ink into viable territory where you think, oh, I can get whatever it costs to make that first comic. So say like it's got to be at least $25,000. So your mailing list matches those numbers. You're like, okay, well, I'm ready to sell my first 48-page story for whatever. You build your customer base, and then you sell them stuff. Oh my gosh, we're losing control. We must shut down Comicsgate. Call them Japanese from the 1940s. Call them incels. And you know the irony of 300-pound Dan Slott, Mark Waid, Gail Simone, and a lot of the others calling anyone an incel. You would have to roll them in flour and go for the wet spot to bang them. There's so many little Comicsgate channels with their own projects. Like, there's got to be, I was going to say, there's got to be a way to keep track of them. There's Comicron, or is it Indicron? Indicron. I don't know if there needs to be like I don't know. I was going to say someone should do like a once a week consolidation video on like the small campaigns, and I realized, oh, I'm making videos. Someone would just say, well, yeah, why don't you do it? You have a cell phone camera right in front of you. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll try to keep track of that. That's a thought, like a Sunday roundup for the small campaigns, to see like which ones are kind of the ones you want to look at, and which ones tell them to go back and polish things up a little bit. So Tom King is some Fed who thinks he is the CIA from the movies and not the CIA Mossad of Weimar America. You gather in, like, people think that these government things are so impressive. Are lawyers and accountants sexy characters? Because that's a lot of people who are in the government. They have Juris Doctorates and they're masters. Or maybe foreign languages, which would be a little bit more sexy. Like if you're actually boots on the ground, that's probably the most dangerous. But if you're writing stories, it's like that's much more sexy than sitting behind a computer and running a drone program. He gathers info and sends helicopters in to drop 40 millimeters on Durka Durka, assuming that you're deleting the bad guys. And don't get me wrong, the Taliban, ISIS, Boko Haram, Al-Qaeda, there goes monetization, are all evil, evil dudes. But it's sort of like 6 of one, a half dozen of the other. They do what works for them. Involuntary servitude for women and children is sort of their vibe, their culture. We must respect the stunning and brave multiculturalism of it. Hashtag diversity isn't working. Bring in more diversity so it doesn't work faster. We'll make it up in volume. Anyway, so Tom King is busy drone striking children for peace and decided to bring that energy to comics, where he decided to drone strike the audience with depression bombs. The Wu Flu is literally super serial dangerous. Man, bear big. But Comic Cons are still going on because maybe the material with the pore space of like 250 microns will stop particle sizes. I don't know what it is. If it's submicron or 10 microns, it's orders of magnitude, which mean factors of 10 difference. Which actually, it will stop some particles, because particles will attach to moisture, or they'll attach to particles with the opposite charge, or just with, a lot of surface area. But, if we really thought this was super serial, you'd be in like N95s, which means you got to shave, or you got to shave to make the N95 fit right, which is a problem if you have beautiful plumage on your face like I do. You'd have a face mask and gloves. And, if like, is it serious or is it not serious? Because it's like it's wearing a condom with a couple of holes in it. You're like, either do it or just don't do it. What's the point of doing a half-ass? I don't know. This 2-ply made in China cotton mask that I'm seeing all over I could like pick up these masks and like, shouldn't there be a public campaign about, make sure you dispose of your masks properly? No, they're all over the street, which means they get washed into the storm drainage, which means they get washed into the estuaries and ocean. That's not an issue for anyone. In the 90s, like, the left used to be really hardcore environmentalists. Now that same left wing just buys plastic bottles. Well, we're recycling. It takes more energy to it's probably a net zero of recycling versus just not recycling and putting them in landfills, and like nobody wants to admit that. Penn and Teller did an analysis of recycling, and the only thing that was probably a gain was aluminum, because aluminum's actually worth something. Where was I going with this? I'm saying you'd be wearing N95 masks, gloves, and you'd have little alcohol pumps and shit like that. Something, something's wrong with the narrative. Trust the science. I do. But if you tell me something can't be questioned, then you're 100% of the time covering up a lie. Anyway, so someone didn't put on their mask fast enough. That Cody guy, and Tom panicked. Why? He's masked and he's triple vaccinated and he's got monthly boosters, and you're gonna need some more boosters. No, I don't think I need any booster. I don't think I need any inoculation. But it's just got FDA approval. So does that affect the liability? No, they're not going to be held liable. Oh, okay. That doesn't sound good at all. Are there long-term studies? Well, no, unless you're a time traveler. Unless you're a time traveler, there are no long-term studies, because you can't travel through time. You'd have to maybe suspended animation, go in the future 40 years. Long-term studies. My point is there's no long-term studies because the time hasn't passed. So I'm just my 2 cents, not medical advice. Like, comment, subscribe, join the channel, get a shiny, whatever those things are. And I will see you guys on the next episode.